All right, well, welcome everybody to our first panel session of the Blister Summit. Very happy to have you all here. And we thought we would just kick things off by talking a little bit more about how some of our reviewers review gear and just think about, or what they think about when they're taking out a new ski or pair of boots or whatever the equipment is. And now that you have had a taste of getting on some new equipment today, hopefully we might be able to say something here that will help you think about the next couple of days. And then, of course, if you guys have some questions for us, we'll have some time for that too. But where I want to get started today is with Paul Forward. We're very happy to have Paul in from Girdwood, Alaska. You want to have lead heli guides. You want to have physicians come and that sort of type of person. I don't know how many physician lead heli guides there actually are in the world, but he's one of them. But I think we should start with the fact that you had an interesting approach to gear testing today.
Yep.
What did you do?
I decided after my third turn on Big Shoot to just take the rest of it head first, sliding on Gore-Tex. Figured that I was going to see how fast I could accelerate on my Patagonia Gore-Tex jacket. Turns out pretty fast.
Okay.
Didn't test the helmet, which I was a little worried I might be testing.
Was this more tomahawk? Was this just a slide?
No, it was get on my tails, kind of get all out on my heels, tail, and then slide out backwards, head first to the bottom. It wasn't really much tomahawking. It was not like an Alaska crash. Those usually involve lots of tomahawking. This was more just sliding.
Okay.
Real fast. I think it was probably maybe worse for the people watching than it was for me. I'm sure they thought I was going to get hurt.
Okay. You didn't get hurt?
Nope, it was okay.
Awesome. That's great.
Yep.
That's great. Well, then we're happy to have you here.
Happy to be here.
Yeah. So you and I met actually in Argentina, 2011.
Also with me crashing.
Also, actually forgot that. Yeah. You almost murdered me.
I almost killed you.
Yeah.
Also with one ski on.
Yeah.
Also crashing.
That's like your thing. You go to a new place and just try to.
That's how I feel it out.
Yeah. But you've been doing this quite a while now. And I guess we'll just let you kind of open the conversation. We'll just ask, let's talk about one thing that maybe you do when you go, say, get out on a ski for the first time. What are you thinking about looking for to go do what you do in terms of our reviews?
In a perfect scenario, if I get a new ski, I usually, in my mind, I have some kind of benchmark skis in each category. And those of you guys that read Blister a lot, you know that mostly I review the powder skis because that's kind of my world where I live. And what I like to do. And so I usually try to get a run in the day before or that morning or whatever on a ski I know really well in the similar conditions so that I have a little bit of a mental benchmark for what I'm looking for. And then a lot of it's just, I just try to think about how it's different than that ski because usually it's a ski that I really know really well. And that's kind of how I started off. I don't mess with tune ever out of the box. I never start with anything like that. I usually start with the recommended mount point, almost always, unless it just feels really wacky when I first put it on my feet. And sometimes those are heli runs. Sometimes more than once I've skied a new ski for the first time ever on a 3,000-foot heli run. But they're usually skis I know the shape, I know the binding, and I try to get at least a lap in at Alyeska before I get out and do that. But I think that's the biggest thing for me is benchmarking. And then if I can, I'll try to as soon as I make a few runs on that new ski, I'll try to get back on something I know and just kind of recalibrate my head a little bit because that really helps me to have a reference point. And sometimes I'm really lucky. Sometimes heli skiing, I can throw a second pair in the basket and strap it in, and then I can swap out partway through the day, and that's huge because it's very different out there than other conditions I ski. So,
Kara Williard.
Hello.
Hi.
Hey everyone.
When you're taking a new pair of skis out for the first time, is there a couple things that you're very intentionally thinking about?
Yeah, well, I think most of you know that, or some of you know, that I spent the last 12 years as a boot fitter. And I think what that taught me is it's really useful to just extinguish personal biases and think to what a product is going to be doing best for a particular person. And I think the first step for that is knowing yourself really well. And you may kind of have found from that survey we sent out last night that like kind of knowing your own personal preferences is a great starting point, and then kind of pushing that to the side and starting to think about what the ski is doing well, and whether or not it's preferential for those conditions or for that day, or even for like the type of ski I want on that particular terrain or that type of snow. Just having a point where I can kind of take myself out of the equation and really read that ski for what it is doing best, and maybe who's going to benefit from the particular nuances of that particular ski. And then I also think it's interesting because I've spent a lot of time on men's skis, so it's really helpful for me to be able to A/B test men and women's comparable skis. And sometimes that's really revealing of like how much softer, or that I might gravitate towards the men's ski because there's a longer length that is a little bit more apt for my build. But yeah, I think it's useful to have that as well, being able to A/B test men's versus women's.
Dylan, young buck.
That's me.
One of the newer folks to the review game at Blister. And so actually I'm very curious to hear, because frankly, I feel like I've been doing it so long that some of it just starts to get a bit ingrained. And so I'm curious how much your approach has evolved or changed from like the first skis you were getting on, to where you are today.
Yeah, I think it's important to bring up the point that getting out with the intent of reviewing and assessing a ski is pretty different than just going out to ski for fun. And I think you all have been, testing skis has been your world on snow for longer than I have been doing it. But for some context, like 2 years ago, I was skiing all my own skis. For the last 2 years, I've been on Blister skis and writing reviews and whatnot. And this might be a little bit of my personal opinion, and I guess you could say like philosophy with skis, but I think when you're out on a ski that is good for you and good for the conditions of that day, the ski itself isn't really most of the experience of that day, right? Like a good ski kind of lets you forget about the ski itself and just think about skiing itself, if that makes sense. Like the turns you're making, the terrain that you're in. I guess what I'm trying to say is when you're skiing for fun, the ski should be getting along really well with you, and that's really not what you're thinking about a lot. But going out and reviewing skis, like the ski is like the main objective of the day, right? Like who is this for? What kind of turns does it like to make? How damp is it? How forgiving is it? How stable is it? Versus like, I already know I like this ski, and now the experience is skiing itself rather than assessing a ski, if that makes sense. So I think it's important to, I know a lot of you are here to like figure out the ski for yourself, or just to get on other brand skis and see what you think. I think it is important to have that different mindset of really, focusing on the ski, seeing if it lets you enter that flow state. I don't know if you've heard that term before, where you're just really in the groove, feeling good, and a ski that lets you enter the flow state and kind of forget about the ski itself is usually a pretty good ski for you.
One of the things I'm going to ask you all in a minute is, if for a number of you, when we're up here, and we talk about it, I think quite a bit on Blister, where it's like, in a way, I sort of don't care if I like a ski or not. I mean, it's a good day for me on the mountain when we get to be on products that we personally click with, but that's really not the point for us, right? It is that like, who is this thing for? Who is going to be most into this particular product? But if I were in your shoes, it's like, hey, I'm here trying to figure out what products are feel best to me personally, right? And I might ask you from that mindset if you have any particular thoughts. And I think one thing that I do, I just like doing it in general when I'm writing a review, which is actually always, so if I'm out on something, it's always in that, like, who's this for? Where does this ski really shine? or the boot feel most comfortable, most at home. But I really just like having my kind of reference lines that I come back to, pretty much year over year, right? Where, yeah, conditions change a bit, but you kind of know, like for me, left side of Jokerville. I actually skied it with some folks today. I don't care what shape that left side is, but because I know when it's really firm and harsh, what that's gonna kind of feel like. And when it's really nice, I kind of know what that is. And so hitting certain reference lines, at a particular place, and especially for those of you who don't ski here all the time, I might advise find at least 2 or 3 lines that you like, you're comfortable on, and then that's a pretty good way to just run, whether it's some boots or whether it's some skis, and just see, it's like, wow, I actually felt a lot more confident or comfortable, on this ski as opposed to that ski in that same terrain. But so yeah, some reference lines. What do you think to help folks who aren't worried about writing super long reviews?
Yeah, I think that's a good one. I definitely do the same thing at my home mountain, is have the reference lines. I think when I get my hands on a new pair of skis at the hill, I definitely try to ski different runs in different ways. Like I'll ski the same run, but I'll ski it differently. I'll try to really force out as many short turns as I can, see if the ski kind of is more conducive to that. I typically have a big open ski area, so I ski a lot, just kind of down the fall line, straight and fast, and I'll see how the ski responds to that, and just kind of like think about different applications of the ski and how it does when I try to push it in places and push it in ways that may or may not be the design intent of it, just to kind of get a feel for it.
Kara?
Yeah, I think if you're trying to hone in on a particular product, it's going to be useful to try and eliminate some variables. So maybe you find a run or a line from top to bottom this week that is a great consistent run that you can keep going back to and trying on different skis. I think there's quite a bit of varied terrain here, so you may have noticed, like within a single, well, maybe 2 lift run, you can go from really steep fall line terrain, you can pop into some glades, get into some really tight terrain, and then maybe end up on an open sort of apron where you're able to make some bigger turns at higher speeds, and then from there hit some moguls, and then suddenly you're able to test it and its carving ability. So trying to eliminate some of the variables, so maybe you do have that consistent factor over the course of the next 3 days. Also, if you're like trying to test boots and skis, but you're starting to like really think about a particular ski, it might be good to kind of eliminate that extra variable for a second and just have like your boot or the boot you've been skiing the last several days. So you do have, I think, those benchmarks, and then maybe you have a ski that you're really familiar with, and you can go back to that ski to kind of notice those differences that maybe you wouldn't have been so keen on prior to testing, 10 skis over the last few days.
Yeah. Something that I think about a lot on skis is the balance point in terms of weight distribution. And I would say balance is a pretty constant thing among people. Everyone has their own style. A lot of people ski pretty upright and centered on the ski. More directional skiers will put a lot of force into the shovels of the ski a little bit more forward, like in the tongue of your boots. And a lot of the times if I'm skiing a ski and something just feels a little bit off, sometimes changing my balance and my stance when I'm skiing can kind of reveal a lot about what's going on there. Like, for example, if you're skiing a ski pretty centered and the tails are feeling punishing, or the tails are like not really washing out as much as you'd like them to, a lot of the times, it's not like I think I need to detune the tails. Like, just shifting your weight a little bit forward can do a lot to make that ski feel better. And that's just one instance, but I think if you're on a ski and something just feels a little off, then I think just changing your balance point a little bit on the ski can reveal a lot about the ski. And usually that's mounted on the recommended line, as Paul kind of referenced earlier. A lot mount point can change a lot with that as well, and that's one of the blessings of having demo bindings on a track, is we can mess with that and we integrate into our reviews. And I'm sure the vendors here would be willing to work with you all and be like, I think if I move the bindings a little forward or a little back, I might be getting a little more out of the ski, or it might suit me better. So yeah, I'd say balance point is something to think about.
I think it's worth also mentioning that one of the cool things about the way we do reviews at Blister is we get them for a long time. And it would be really hard for me to pick a ski to buy based on my like 4 runs that I get per day on the skis that are here. I get a sense of them, and I have a lot of experience with a lot of skis, so I can kind of wrap my head around what I might buy for myself. But I come back to skis like, a couple days later, a week later, conditions change, it hasn't snowed in a while, fresh snow. And sometimes my opinion completely changes on a ski that, like for what it's good for or what I can do with it. If, it's later in the year and I start to feel like, oh man, I'm skiing groomers now and this thing's awesome. This thing really rails groomers, or for example. So I think, picking a ski on a 1-day demo is tough. And I think that's part of the value of our reviews, quite honestly, is that we ski them for weeks or months or sometimes years before the reviews go up.
Yeah, and I think, it's been an interesting element because it is kind of a staple of our reviews that we do multiple days in multiple conditions. And so, an event like this is really interesting, right? Things are happening quicker and in a more condensed period of time. And I think what I really want to do is help you optimize this time, or if you're back at your home mountain and a demo rolls through, again, if we can help give you maybe some ideas for how to go about thinking of this stuff. And I have to say, one of the really cool things that I am very happy for the companies that have come, we still aren't encouraging anybody to like go take out a ski for 1 run or 2 runs. And literally every brand I've talked to has been cool about that. So we have kind of talked about, if you guys want to do 2 runs and you have your system, you do what you want to do. We've talked a lot about probably try to spend 2 hours, that seems about like a good, you can go, that's one thing we love about this mountain. If you haven't figured it out yet, like, what do you want? Steep groomers, low angle groomers, steep, scary stuff, something in between. Like you can kind of go get into whatever you want to get into in the span of 2 hours. And I really am happy that, because frankly, a lot of the brands are used to, I think, going to tests where it's like 1 run, bring it back, or 2, right? And it's still, even though this is a condensed event, I think just a bit more time than that. There's a lot of difference between 4 laps on a ski versus 2, if you are going to get it into some different terrain. And so, we've got no pushback on that from any of the brands. So appreciate you all kind of understanding why we don't like the 1 run thing. And thanks for accommodating. Let me break here. Did any of you want to add anything else before we see if there's some questions?
I might say one more thing. Yeah. Kara brought up the point of reference skis. I think Dylan did too, and I mentioned it. But for example, this is like the skiing here is very different than like skiing, almost any skiing I've ever done before. It's steep, it's huge moguls. That's like very foreign to me. And I have a feeling that as I get more used to that type of skiing, wrap my head around the terrain a little more, the skis that I'll, if I was like going to choose one to buy, for example, at the end of the day or the end of 3 days here might be different than the one that appealed to me today as I kind of get into it. Also, I get tired throughout the day, and the last ski of the day, sometimes you're like, that ski was really demanding. And so having that reference ski that you come back to that, oh man, I really loved that ski this morning. I wonder if I still will now that my legs are tired, but I'm more comfortable on this run. And go back that one you're thinking like that you loved and try it again, because you might be surprised that you're tired now and they're all hard.
Yeah. I'm sure a lot of you got on a ski today and you're really loving it, having a good time. I would recommend to try some more skis and get on that ski again later.
Totally.
Yeah.
The first person you meet in life is probably not going to be the person you marry. You might get lucky, but I think the same is true of skis. So.
Good one.
Young buck dropping life advice. Well done, Dylan. I kind of have a question for you all, but I guess maybe I'll let you go first. Did people have questions?
So the question was, this gentleman here in the front said that he has 7 pairs of skis and he picks skis for particular applications, but he's wondering if there's like an idea or philosophy where you choose skis to like improve your skiing, basically, like so then that when you swap to a different ski, your skiing's better or stronger for having been on another ski for a while. I said that more confusingly than you did, but I very much have the same philosophy on skiing. I didn't get to ski race or have that kind of background growing up, and so I'm always bugging all my ski racer friends. I'm always trying to figure out how to ski better, and I find personally, I'm always trying to figure out what are my practice skis or training skis, and it's funny, the company I work for, the guiding company, all of us are kind of that way. We spend all this time skiing powder, and that makes you kind of a lazy skier. And we have what we call the practice skis. We have a place in our hangar where we hang the practice skis up, and they're always like stiff, short, super carvy front side skis. I have a pair of World Cup slalom skis, stuff like that. I think those kind of skis make you a better skier. I think, and you ski them and you make as many turns as possible, and I think that has helped me a lot personally. You guys, what do you guys think?
Well, I'm going to jump in. What I don't do is take slalom skis into like the people who skied left side of Jokerville moguls. Right. I'm not doing that, so I don't think yeah.
Depends on what you're working with for your hill.
Yeah, but like taking a slalom ski out on a groomer, yeah, and like use that tool very well kind of in its, natural habitat or where it shines. Yeah, that stuff all the time, but I don't know. I don't know that I do have that same, like, skiing for me isn't working out, like it's skiing. And so I don't actually count, like if I go backcountry skiing, I don't really count that as a workout. Like that was skiing. That's like the fun part. Like we'll go to the weight room or, go running if we need to work out. So I don't know, that idea, you guys are just, I think, tougher than I am, but I don't, like, I'm not taking front side skis into gnarly moguls because, yeah, I think I like my knees too much, but maybe you two should talk. And Kara or Dylan, are you?
Yeah, I think it doesn't have to be like a punishing approach, but skis that bring you back to the foundation of something that's an incredibly useful skill. So when it's a ski that is intended to, just rip on groomers and you're on groomers really like perfecting your carve or really fine tuning, and you find yourself like where those little bit of stance imbalances are, or you're able to be on a really narrow ski that's really gonna draw out, maybe you have a turn that's stronger than another. Having a ski that kind of shows you that foundation and exactly where you're at, I think is very useful. I know like one of the most useful winters of my life was the winter of 17-18 because all I did was ski man-made groomers till late February, and all I did was ski carving skis. Why? And because it was the worst snow year on record. Gotcha. Sorry. And so I think that was an incredibly important time in my life because I had a ski that was really nuanced to a specific skill that I was looking to gain, and it helped me in that way. Thereafter, I think if you're trying to like progress on like really steep or technical terrain, taking like a more punishing approach isn't really going to be helpful. Like I even find myself guilty of that sometimes because sometimes I'm on really stiff directional skis and they're quite heavy, and I'm like, why do I suck so bad at jump turning? And then I just get on something lighter and suddenly I'm making a hop turn with a lot less effort. And so I think you can take that approach, but you don't have to do it in a punishing way. You can just do it in a way that you're like, I'm going to really focus on this particular skill, and this ski's going to either point out where I can improve, or it's going to help me gain a skill that maybe next time you go back to that heavier ski, it doesn't feel quite as difficult.
So the question was, how much research do we do before getting, say, into a new ski boot or onto a new ski, as opposed to just kind of coming in blind? Yeah. I'd say increasingly I'm coming in blind a lot more than I used to. And I don't know if that's like right or wrong. I think that I've been doing this long enough that the way I guess I test stuff is you just start adapting to the product. And I guess that's become such a comfortable thing to do that it doesn't, I might as well just come in with less information. And it is interesting because sometimes, in particular, in terms of the weight of skis, I'll be a bit surprised. That thing is more stable than I anticipated it would be, or the other way around. It's actually not quite as stable as I thought, given the weight on the scale. And so I've found over the years that I just come in with less information and then adjust to it. And then it's interesting to see what the companies are saying about the product and who they're saying it's for. Frankly, in the old days when I used to read all that, then go get on it, sometimes I'd be like, yeah, that's not who I think that's for. And then we write that. But I'm coming in more blind these days. I don't know about you three.
Yeah, I think after you get a lot of time on a bunch of different skis, you can look at the shape of a ski, look at the rocker profile, feel the weight of it, and look at the mount point and other factors, and have a pretty good idea of how it's going to perform. But I think, like this gentleman in the front said, he has 7 skis. I don't think a lot of people have 7 skis out there. So, I do think, if you can look at a ski, if you've been on it a bunch, or if you're going up to a vendor booth and they explain the ski for you, it's great to put it in its purpose and do what it's meant to do. But I think it's also really important to intentionally, I think Paul referenced this earlier, like get it out of its comfort zone, because in a realistic world, not everyone has 7 skis in their garage.
So the question is, it's a very good question. What do we do with the fact that as the question was stated, the average skier might get something like 4 days a year in on the mountain? And do we then adjust to account for that? And then follow-up question, that was sort of the follow-up question. Do we actually sort of change, I guess, our own styles? First, I don't speak for everybody here, so I'm kind of curious to hear some of the answers to this. But I think for me, I feel like one of the things I've gained over the last more than 10 years of doing this is just developed a pretty good sense of how forgiving a ski feels, how punishing a ski feels, again, on some reference lines, and then I think some skis that I might not like very much. Let's say for me, I've said it a lot, so it's not really a surprise, like really light skis that are very, very stiff, I find can be pretty scary on roughed up groomers when you're going very fast. But fact is, those same skis, if somebody is just sliding turns, they actually work just fine. They really do, right? And so I think that in our reviews, we care about that 4-day-a-year skier. Think that while our reviews may be going long, the thing that I've maintained from the start is if you're new to the sport, there might be some terms we use that you aren't familiar with, and you all are a better judge of this, so you can tell me how we're doing, but I think our job is we are not trying to just reach experts. I want to think that new skiers, you just need to be passionate about the sport. That's it. If you care and you're willing to maybe reread a sentence a few times and start to figure out some of the terminology, I actually think that our reviews can be really helpful for people who are not getting on the mountain very much, right? So I'll let you judge how good or bad of a job we're doing at that, but that's how I tend to think of these things. And the thing and then I'll shut up, I'm sorry. The thing that I think is really interesting for this as a question, like I know the size of our audience. It's not just people skiing, 80 to 100 days a year at all. And they're emailing us, right? And talking about how they're just getting into the sport or just coming back after 20 years away. And it's the internet. It's not a very polite place, right? If people were dropping $800,000 on that ski or that boot or whatever, and they thought that we misled them, you don't think we'd be hearing about it? And I'm very proud of our team because we get very few notes like that, where it's like, I don't know what you're talking about. This ski, didn't do or perform at all like you said it did. So I think, frankly, that's a credit to our reviewers. But
we tested across all conditions too, so we're considering that 4-day-a-year skier is showing up on their holiday weekend and they're going to be skiing no matter the condition. And so we tested across all conditions because that person may only be skiing groomers and want to make skiddy, quick turns on groomers, or they might just show up on one weekend of their vacation time and it's super firm and that's what they're skiing. And then the next time they go out, maybe it's an awesome POW weekend. And so trying to get them in something that can maybe cater to all those conditions.
Yeah, this is something I think about a lot because as a ski guide, I watch people. I just spend a lot of my life watching people ski, right? And I see, we get a lot of expert skiers. We also get some people that haven't skied POW a lot, for example. And with apologies to people here from ski companies, but like every ski company's marketing hyperbole is generally like high performance, super awesome. The ski's going to crush it in all conditions. And we all know that like you said, a lot of people that are buying skis don't want a super high performance ski. That's not super suitable for them. And so, again, some of the guys here in the ski industry, I've talked to quite a few of them about like, how can we make powder skis that are like easier for people to use who aren't used to skiing powder? And so I watch people ski on the skis, and then every single ski that we have as demos, for example, and we've had half a dozen different skis we could put our guests on, I ski them. And I watch people ski them, and I ski them, and I think a lot about what characteristics of the ski make it more fun to ski POW for people who don't get to do it all the time. So I think about that a ton. It's a great question.
Mm. And one of the things we sure hope, God, you poor companies, I mean, we kill you when we're like, that's fucking not who this is for. So I sure would like to extend the invitation if you're like, we just built something that we think is going to be amazing for people that are going on their once-a-year ski trip, and they're mostly going to have a good time with friends or family, and they're going to get some laps on the mountain. And we sure hope we're helping to maybe change a bit of a culture where you don't still have to talk about how it's the highest performance blah-blah-blah of all time. And it's like, okay, this is who they're saying it's for. Our job is to check out, does it do that, right? And I hope that it just lets us all maybe end up being a bit more, accurate about the kind of products we're making for people, right? To ultimately go have a better time on the mountain, because that's really all this is about, right?
The question is, how do you test boots? Because they're so fit specific in general. And they are, for me anyway, by far the hardest thing to be unbiased about, because as everybody here probably knows, if it fits your foot, even if it's like not quite the flex you need or not quite the boot that you would otherwise love, it's probably the best boot if it fits your foot best. And it's really hard. What do you think, Kara?
Yeah, I mean, I think a reference point for myself over the last 12 years, boot fitting was like at the beginning of every season, putting every single boot on my foot. And that's not because I think every boot's going to work for me. It's just that I can tell those differences across every single model. So like, toe box of this boot feels a little bit shorter than this one. And so there is just like that direct comparison. And then there's like what we need to do to be comfortable in a boot. Like we're always full disclosure about like if we adjust the ramp angle or add our custom insole, that's always part of that review. But that's like what, for myself, that's what allows me to get out on the hill and actually test the boot in regard to its performance, is to be able to tolerate that boot in a more comfortable stance for myself. And so we're always very transparent about what we're doing to get ourselves in a boot and to test that boot reasonably. But then being able to just compare like volume-wise, boot to boot, that is just a reference point. Like if I know I have a high instep, which boots do I feel more pressure over the top of my foot? Which ones don't?
And that's such a key element of how we do our reviews, right? Is trying to, I always use the analogy, it's such an old, I don't ever watch like Price is Right. Is that still on TV? Okay. Plinko, I think it's called, where they drop like the wooden like disc and then it just goes. That's how I think of reviews, right? And so like if we're getting in boots, it's like, okay, this boot definitely has the narrowest heel pocket of, say, these other 5 pretty similar boots. This has the highest instep. And we try to, do a bit of plinkoing to delect, like, who are you? Do you have big fat heels? Awesome, go this way, right? No offense to people with, plus, yeah. And then the other thing when it comes to boots, we start every one of our reviews with like, go find the best boot fitter you can, and it's a conversation. You might not marry them, you might not marry your boot fitter, but go strike up a nice relationship, right? And, and we think it's the right thing to do, and it's the right way to kind of figure this out because, as Paul started by saying, like, get a boot that fits you first, and we can't tell you what that is, We can help direct, if you're like, I have a really narrow heel, and they're telling me that apparently this boot has the narrowest heel of this bunch, so I think we can be helpful, but ultimately we just always defer to not all boot fitters, but the good ones, right? So the question is, how do we think about the term playful as a descriptor if it might be true that the playfulness of a ski might have a whole lot to do with one's ability, the person's ability level on a given ski? Dylan.
I would say I probably review the most playful skis at Blister along with Luke. And there's a lot of different things that you could mean when you say playfulness in a ski, right? Like, for example, we recently reviewed the forefront Hoji, and Luke described it as directionally playful, which I think is a good word for that ski, in the sense that it's a ski that's really easy to slash around and really easy for like making drifts and being a playful skier in that sense. Whereas a ski like the Line Sir Francis Bacon is more one that, it's good for butters, it's pretty soft, it's like pretty poppy, easy to flex, whereas like the Hoji's a playful ski, the SFB is a playful ski. I would way rather do butters on firm snow, at least on Sir Francis Bacon, and I would way rather do 30 mile an hour drifted turns down the fall line on the Hoji, right? So playfulness is a pretty big spectrum, and we try and break that down the most in the there's a ton of different things you can mean, and playfulness is a pretty big buzzword these days that everyone likes to throw around on their ski. So yeah.
But and if I may, so yeah, we'll say playful, but if that's all the reviewer said, they wouldn't work for us. Right? So cool. All right, playful. What do you mean? Articulate that, and that's where we try to add, spell that out. Because if somebody's not spelling it out, you're right. Like it's irrelevant. So the question was, you heard something recently that we might be doing some more quantitative, more lab data-driven analysis in our testing. And yeah, we announced, I don't know, was it 2 or 3 weeks ago now, Blister Labs. And we're very excited about it. You can go to blisterreview.com and you can see sort of an intro video and a bit of a write-up. But I think it's this Wednesday. We're doing a panel session here dedicated to Blister Labs with 4 of the engineering faculty that are kind of 4 of the main players at the moment on this, and I can't wait for you to meet these 4. These are high-level people. They're very good people. They are passionate skiers and mountain bikers, and but yeah, it's something that we're going to bring in. It's one of the things I'm looking forward to fighting about. I keep telling them, I don't care ultimately if we come up with tests in the lab that don't really make, an impact in terms of consumer, our ability to direct consumers. And so it might be interesting, and, intellectual endeavors for the sake of intellectual endeavors. I'm not mad about that, but I don't think that would actually fulfill kind of our aim at Blister. And so come to that panel session and meet these people, and I'm excited for all of you to meet them. And we'll be talking more specifically about some of the things that we're going to be integrating initially, and obviously that's going to grow over time. Okay, you guys were great. Thank you. We're going to do another one of these, actually. Maybe I shouldn't tell you this because it's for Summit B. we're going to do kind of the same thing, bring some different reviewers up to get a bit of a different perspective. But this was really cool. I enjoyed hearing what you guys all had to say. And so we're going to run it back for Summit B. But for now, thank you for the fantastic questions. And I think we're off to a good start with our first live panel session ever. So thanks so much.